My name is Jonathan Gillum.
And this is The Experts. This is Jonathan Gillum, and this is The Experts on Facebook Live, Twitter, and YouTube. Well, it's been a long day. Yes, I got started late today, but I hosted the David Webb Show this morning, and then I guest hosted or hosted with, co-hosted on Newsmax, as I do every Monday with Bill Tucker. So it's been a big day, been a long day. A lot of talking. That's basically 4 hours of talking. We're going to do another hour and a half of talking tonight. So, yeah. I'm from Arkansas. What am I going to say? We do a lot of talking. That's what we do. And there's a lot to talk about, which tonight, my gosh, I know you guys are getting tired of hearing me talk about communism, but the more stuff that there comes out in the news, the more it's just directly pointing towards this subversive stuff going on. Anyway, we're going to talk about that, and a lot of it has to do with that. So let's get started. How many of you are prepared for an incident like this? Get my new book, Sheep No More, The Art of Awareness and Attack Survival, and I will teach you to think like an attacker so you can truly defend yourself. Don't just react, act. Available for pre-order now on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. Sheep No More. Get it. All right, so tonight I'm going to try to stick by what my original plan was for this show when I first started it, which was I'm going to roll up my sleeves like a the hardworking news guy that I am now. Look more like one of the old-time news guys here. What the original plan was to do a warning order every night and kind of lay out the way the show was going to go, and then progress through the different blocks: A block, B block, C block. Inevitably, I get started and I go straight to the truth zone, and then I start in the warning order, and I never progress through the block. So I'm going to try to do that a little bit tonight, break it up a little bit, make it a little bit more interesting. So tonight, I've been railing for several years now on communism. I'm sure everybody that watches this show on a nightly basis gets a little bit tired of me talking about that. But the fact is, I keep saying, I'm reading some of your tweets and the stuff on chat and on Facebook as it comes through here. But I know I rail on this a lot, but you have to understand there really is our biggest enemies in this country. The biggest threats to national security are not ISIS. Okay, they're not. It's not even mass killings like happened in Texas and in Las Vegas, or the terrorist attack that happened down here in New York City, where the guy ran over everybody with a rented Home Depot truck. Those look, the mass killings are happening more and more frequently now. I have a feeling it has to do with drugs, with the breakdown of the ethical behavior in this country. It has to do with inevitably a lot of this stuff is not traced back to, so they say this guy in Texas got a legal gun, but he got it illegally because the stuff wasn't reported by the Air Force that he had been arrested in the Air Force. Well, so that therein lies the problem the majority of the time. It comes down to a lack of awareness and doing your job, which is, so politicians are not aware of the real threat. In a lot of cases, they are the threat. They don't do their job, and so the country is not protected. We have the Air Force that didn't take care of this guy's records properly so that law enforcement knew about it, and so he was able to obtain a gun outside of Texas in a legal manner. Even though he bought it through legal channels, it was still illegal because of the way he did it, so because he'd had this record. So what I'm getting at with all this is that those things are terrible, and there is a growing threat of these mass murders and terrorist attacks here in this country by Islamic fundamentalists. However, as I've said all along, the biggest threat to this country is, I believe there's evidence of this, plenty of evidence, is communism. I believe in the Red-Green Alliance. That's where communism and Islam work together, hand in hand, or covertly together. And I think a good case in point of this is the last thing we're going to talk about with GQ magazine and with Glamour magazine and the people that they've elected as the people of the year for, and as far as they're concerned. And the reality with all these different groups, and with communism and Islam and the support mechanisms that they have, which is the mainstream media. Well, first and foremost, it's very, very wealthy people. Mainstream media. You have the politicians, both political parties. And the activists. And by and large, the reality, folks, is the unwillingness of the American people to wake up, and they're so engrossed in their comfort that they don't do what's uncomfortable. And so they don't raise a ruckus. They don't get involved with it. A lot of the times, the leftists in this country are so organized and so bold that they will rally and yell, and they'll rally in the hundreds, sometimes thousands. They will. I gave a speech once for this big company, and it was at their annual company meeting, and then I sat down at the table, and the lead attorney for this company instantly started questioning me because she knew that I filled in for Sean Hannity, that I was conservative. She immediately started talking about immigration to try, because she's a leftist. So they're not afraid of picking fights in a politically incorrect place because they don't have really anything to fear. They don't get punished for the things that they do. So there's not really a tremendous amount of fear as far as those things go. So lost my train of thought there because I was fixing something on my computer. So, but getting back to this, with communism is the biggest threat that we have in this country. And people are amazed when I say that. Even though I've been talking about this for the longest time, the reality is it continues to raise its ugly head. It continues to show in the media that whether it be the intelligence community, whether it be the magazines that are honoring these people, whether it be the politicians and their actions, they are all showing signs of communism and subversion. Remember, there was a guy that called in today on the David Webb show because I was saying that Colin Kaepernick is a Marxist, and he said no, he's not a Marxist because he would be giving his money to a centralized group of people, and that's just not true. Throughout history, it is shown that the wealthy people that get involved and the big loud activists that get involved with the beginnings of the communists, or are a founding members of the subversive groups, or that are highly integrated with the subversive groups, like the Colin Kaepernicks. A lot of them are very rich, and a lot of the times they don't give. I saw it in Venezuela when I was down there 2 years ago. It's not like the rich people are ingrained in this ideological belief that they are actually going to have to give something up. By and large, they believe that the utopia that will exist is that they will be at the top, living the life like gods on earth, and that everybody else will just be happy and go about their business and serve, basically serve. That's what it really boils down to. All these idiots that are out there protesting on behalf of communism and quote-unquote anti-fascism all these Antifa people and the by all means necessary people, the Black Lives Matter, the Black Panthers, all these different feminist groups, the gay rights activists. Remember, I always say this as a disclaimer. I have nothing against women in this world. In this world, I grew up in a house of all women. I have nothing against people who are gay. That you can live your lifestyle. It doesn't bother me. I have no problems with people who have different color skins than I do, because that doesn't. You can't tell anything about a person's ethics or morals by their skin, their sexuality, their gender, or in certain circumstances, their religion. But these activist groups that they cling to, when people try to find some type of belonging, they cling to these groups, and those groups do it on purpose. They put themselves out there to be their spokespersons, to give them shelter. What ends up happening, the Black Lives Matter, they don't do anything, like NAACP, they don't do anything to fix the inner city or to fix poverty or to bridge the gaps between minorities and the rest of the country. I don't really know how we even struggle with trying to deem who's a minority or not. I mean, the reality is they determine that based on the color of skin, which I find that very weird. They define whether or not you're a minority based on the color of your skin and your gender, by and large, more than anything. And I guess your sexuality. And there's a couple other things in there now. It's gotten bigger. The list has gotten bigger. But ultimately, the very things that they preach don't prejudice people about are the things that they determine whether you're a minority. I just find that so strange. But the reality is all these groups, the gay movement doesn't do anything to bridge the gap between society and people who may have gay tendencies. It just preaches, tell everybody that you're gay. I mean, again, I don't understand why anybody has to tell anybody about their sexuality. I don't care to hear about other people's sexuality. I don't care if they're straight or gay. I don't need to hear it. I mean, I'm not interested in it. It doesn't make any difference in how my relationship is with you, or if I was a boss. Can you do the job? Can you shut your mouth and not be like millennials, where you have to realize your opinion doesn't matter until you prove that you're worthy of being listened to, until your skill set, you prove that you have knowledge, understanding, experience, so you're wise. That's when you're going to be listened to. I long for people like that to work with me and around me. I don't care what gender, sexuality, race. That's something we determine by color of skin, by the way. It doesn't matter with any of that stuff. But they use these groups to divide and ultimately conquer different countries where they go into. So I want to go through tonight, and I want to talk a little bit about systematically how these people do this, how they utilize this ability to divide the country. And I think we'll start with Clapper and Brennan, two of the biggest political hacks and liars and posers in the intelligence community and in government that has ever been in history, in modern history. So let's listen. I mean, you're going to get an earful here. This thing is 16 minutes long. I'm not going to play all of it, but you're going to get an earful of Brennan defending Clapper and himself against the things that President Trump has said. So let me pull this video up here, and hopefully you'll be able to see it. Hold on one second here. I wish I had a tech guy or girl, because everything tech is like going crazy these days. All my Apple stuff is all jacked up, and I got a brand new Apple iPhone. Had to get an iPhone, another phone, because the screen on this iPhone 6 Plus, the screen just has died, where it won't. The touchpad's not working anymore. So I had to fork out more money for an iPhone 8 Plus, and it won't keep the cell service going. After a while, like if I move from one place to the next and it switches to a different cell tower, it just drops. The cell coverage drops. I have to reboot the phone, so I got to get a new one. Okay, let's go. That's my problem. Let's go to the A block, and then I'm going to bring up this video from CNN. Let's do that now. How many of you are prepared for an incident like this? Get my new book, Sheep No More, The Art of Awareness and Attack Survival, and I will teach you to think like an attacker so you can truly defend yourself. Don't just react, act. Available for pre-order now on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. Sheep No More. Get it. All right. right, get ready. This is an earful here. We played this as a soundbite today on David Webb's show.
The president also called both of you and FBI Director Comey political hacks. All three of.
First off, this guy drives me absolutely crazy right here. Zero experience in life, simply a political. He's another political hack that works in media. He is another one of these subversive mouthpieces for the globalist communist movement in this country. I know people, listen, I know people think I sound like some kind of Alex Jones, but I am not. I'm telling you, I've been talking about this stuff long before, for instance, the NFL went down on a knee and started playing all the games that they're playing. I've been talking about this stuff for a long time. It is reality, okay? Now, the reason why I wanted to include this guy's question, I want you to listen to the question again because he's basically setting them up to answer this question the way that they want to answer it, but they're immediately focusing back on Trump. Anyway, just listen to the question, and then I'll explain it.
The president also called both of you and FBI Director Comey political hacks. All three of you worked in senior levels in the Obama administration, although you also worked during the Bush administration. How do you respond to the charge?
Well, first of all, he was.
Okay. Did you hear that at the end? Listen to who all this guy, both of these people have worked for. Listen to this one part again.
Although you also worked during the Bush administration. You worked in senior levels in the Obama administration, although you also worked during the Bush administration.
Okay. That statement right there tells you so much. I see that I don't even know how to say your screen name here. Bim Skin U5. These names. You said on Twitter, when we started putting politicians and not spooks in charge of intel, it went to hell. Same thing with the DOD in 1947. Never won a war since then. Same thing with the FBI. Same thing with all these intelligence groups. What did you just hear there? I'm going to play it one more time. See if you can pick out what I'm going to say here.
Worked in senior levels in the Obama administration, although you also worked during the Bush administration.
Okay, that has got to be fascinating to you. The fact that these two worms right here both worked in the Obama administration, but also worked in the Bush administration. I personally talked to a full-bird colonel in the Air Force that was in with Clapper, and he said he could never figure out what it was about Clapper that made him rise. Everybody else's careers went like this, or they climbed slowly. This guy was up and always there. No matter what administration was there, he was there. He was a part, very closely attached to the president. Both these individuals are liars. They've lied in front of Congress. They've lied in front of the American people. And as you can see, as I was saying, when they had all the presidents on stage for the, I think that was for Houston, for the floods, they had the 5 living former presidents, or was that for the shooting? I don't remember if that was for Vegas or if that was for Houston. But regardless, I talked about how destructive all 5 of those presidents were and how the reality is they all are a part of the same ideology. I mean, there's very little difference between the Bushes and the Clintons and Obama and people like this that float in between and work with all of them. That should kind of scare you a little bit because up until Trump, recent history, since I can remember, there's very little difference between all these different groups. Very little difference between these politicians. They railroad against this, they railroad against that. The Republicans hate Obamacare, but yet they don't have anything to do to stop it once they get in charge. It's all a scam. The whole thing is a scam. So now let's listen to what these two have to say. These two floaters that go from political, from president to president, basically, who are political appointees, who they themselves, if I don't even know what their experience is in the intel community. I mean, I know this guy was in somewhat of an intel community. This guy, I mean, the reality is they long since sold their souls for whatever value they had to Satan and the government. I mean, it's clear. And now when the president called them political hacks, remember where the president's coming from. This is President Trump. He's coming from the fact that they trashed him over and over, which if they were true spooks in their community, intel people, they would keep their stuff to facts and not narrative. But that's not what they do. In fact, they're some of the crafters of narrative. So the president fights back. He doesn't sit there and take it. And so he's fighting back with these individuals, calling them political hacks. I think it's a perfect description. But listen to this whiny, sniveling response by Brennan, who's a Muslim sympathizer, and listen to how he puts this. To me, they are basically spelling out the reality of who they are and how little experience they actually have. Let's listen.
Respond to the charge.
Well, first of all, he was referring to us as political hacks because he was trying to delegitimize the intelligence community assessment that was done.
Delegitimize. Okay. He said he referred to them as political hacks, which they are, because that's what they do. They serve in a political capacity, not in an intelligence capacity. These guys are not out collecting intel. These are the people that write those, the damning political reports that say that Trump and that the Russians colluded with Trump. These are the people that that signed off on those reports, right? They're political hacks. They are appointees. They are not people who've worked their way up through the process. He's saying that he called them political hacks because he wants to delegitimize the intel. Let's listen to that statement one more time.
Political hacks because he was trying to delegitimize the intelligence community assessment that was done.
Okay. The intelligence community assessment, I'm not exactly sure, and we shouldn't know, but I'm not exactly sure who did the assessment, if it was basically staffers that wrote that for these guys, and or if there were really even any intel people associated with that. Remember, when they say the intel community, these people are talking about themselves and other political appointees. They're not talking about the guys, the men and women that are on the ground, actually pounding the ground and working human intelligence, so on and so forth. So there was no legitimacy to the Russian claims about Russian interference in the political process. I mean, listen, that stuff happens in every country, in every other country working against even allies work against each other to try to mold and manipulate elections. Because let's say there's the Democrats are in office, or Republicans in office, and Israel has an election like with Obama, and they had ground operatives on the ground from the United States over there trying to influence the election against Bibi Netanyahu. Okay, what's the difference between that and what the Russians did? The Russians aren't necessarily our ally, but there's really no difference in what we were doing in Israel. So when we look at the dossier that came out, the dossier that came out against Trump was fake. It was fraud. The Bureau used it to legitimize stuff when, in fact, it was a lie. So that means their information was not legitimate. Also, these individuals backed it in a lot of ways. It was passed through Congress and two different intel communities. You didn't hear these people demeaning it. When the collusion with Russia and Trump fizzled out, well, I actually believe that they're in charge of the entrapment of putting this thing together and creating that fake evidence. I think they were involved with it, but nothing ever came of it. So, Mr. Brennan, if you were sitting in front of me, I would tell you to your face, you are not legitimate, and the intelligence that you've produced is not legitimate either. I mean, it's simple. It's not rocket science. Everything that the intel community, when, again, I'm not talking about my brothers and sisters on the ground over there, although a lot of them are liberal as well, but I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about you. I'm talking about the guy sitting to your left, our right. You all are not legitimate. You produce illegitimate information, and you do it for political reasons and subversive reasons only. Only. Let's continue.
Clapper, Jim Comey, and John Brennan did not write that assessment. It was written by the professional intelligence officers and law enforcement officers of this great country.
There's no proof of that, but there is proof that, like, for instance, James Comey, when he's doing the Hillary Clinton investigation, handpicked all the people that would carry out that investigation. Now, do you think that James Comey, the guy that leaked federal information, the guy that lied for Hillary Clinton, the guy that said that he had not what was it with Hillary stuff? You know, he was making decisions before decisions were actually fulfilled, as though Hillary Clinton was not guilty before they had even interviewed her, and he had statements saying that she was not guilty. I mean, the guy's clearly a liar, okay? Let me play this soundbite one more time. I want to hear what he has to say again.
By the professional intelligence officers and law enforcement officers of this great country.
So he's saying that those officers that I'm always talking about, the professional people on the ground level, are the ones who wrote these reports. That's not true. I can guarantee you that's not true. Just like Comey handpicked the people to investigate Hillary Clinton, and also the field office where that was being done was being controlled by McCabe, the guy whose wife received like close to $1 million for a Democratic campaign and didn't tell the FBI about it. So those are the people that were handpicked by Comey. If you don't think that these individuals do the same exact thing, you're crazy. They're appointed. They go out and pick people that do and say what they want, just like they do and say what the president wants, whatever president is in office at a given time.
Secondly, I feel very honored to be associated with Jim Clapper and Jim Comey in the same category. And considering the source of the criticism, I consider that criticism a badge of honor. Okay,
so right there, you're starting to see, I don't really even have to say much. I feel the need to, but the reality is, this guy is such a scumbag right here that he is demeaning Trump and trying to show how great they are by aligning himself with known criminals. That's how weird these people are. Known criminals, people who have done criminal things, and he is associating himself with them. I just find that so odd, except for the fact that I arrested a lot of people like this when I was in the FBI, and that's what they do when they think they're above it all. All right, let's keep going.
Third, I found it particularly reprehensible that on Veterans Day, that Donald Trump would attack and impugn the integrity and the character of Jim Clapper, who served in uniform for 35 years, who...
Okay. I'm going to say this with all due respect to people who, you know, I wore the uniform, of course, right? And there's people who, Kitty Kelly, who comes on this show, she served 33 years in the Army. And amazing, amazing woman, 33 years in the United States Army. That is something, 4 deployments. First woman that as an instructor at Air Assault School. First female in an airborne infantry unit. In 1984. I mean, Kitty Kelly has been there. She's done that. Or was that 94? I don't want to mistake that, but she was the first woman there. She worked as an MP, as a criminal investigative in the criminal investigative division. That's some of the real measurable experience. When you look at Clapper, there's very little you can measure from his military experience, except that he went from here to here, and then he's always been close to the president. I've seen several people like that. It makes no sense to me the way these people do this. But let's just take his military career out of it, and let's just solely concentrate on the politics and the game of politics that he's played with the presidents and with our intelligence community. He sat and lied in front of Congress. He has lied in front of the American people. He has been a part of some of the most destructive decisions in the intel community under some of the most nefarious and most incompetent presidents that this country has ever had. And this guy is trying to he's saying that the president criticized him on or around Veterans Day. The fact is, the president is defending himself and defending the truth by spelling out the reality of who Clapper actually is and who Brennan actually is. And it's no different than if John McCain raised his head on that day, 84. Thank you, Kitty Kelly. John McCain raised his head and insulted Trump, and Trump came back at him. John McCain wore his uniform. Everything he did was like, way back when he was held hostage in Vietnam after getting shot down. But from that point forward on, it's been a disastrous career in politics, and he's one of the biggest national security threats that we have to this country. So I'd say the same thing about him. I don't care if it's Veterans Day or not. Hey, thank you for your service, Brennan. Thank you for your service, McCain. But you've been screwing this country up for way too long, and all three of you are political hacks, all of you.
Responded to the call of his country to go to Vietnam, flew in over 70 combat support missions over Vietnam, and like Senator McCain, really did put his life at risk because of this country's national security. And to impugn the character of somebody like Jim Clapper on Veterans Day, who has dedicated so much of his life to this country, I just find that outrageous, and it's something that I think that Mr. Trump should be ashamed of, but it doesn't seem as though anything he does, he feels any shame whatsoever.
He should bite his own tongue. You sniveling wimp. I mean, the reality is, look, what you did in Vietnam, great. That was then. I'm not demeaning that service, but that was then. From that point forward to now, you, Clapper, are a political hack and a national security threat to this country because you do and say whatever the political parties ask, or the establishments ask you to say and do. You are a danger to this country. This guy right here, such a narcissistic liar. Everything that he just projected onto President Trump is exactly what he does. I want to play that part again. It's exactly what he does. Let's see here. He got stage fright.
I just find that outrageous, and it's something that I think that Mr. Trump should be ashamed of, but it doesn't seem as though anything he does, he feels any shame whatsoever.
So how do you think these two individuals feel shame for dealing with false reports and throwing the entire country into a tizzy during the election by formulating fake allegations and fake and fraudulent reports that the president has been involved with all this stuff Russian? Do you think they feel any shame about that? No. They're literally, what they're doing right here is you have Jake Tapper, who is one of the biggest mouthpieces for this communist, subversive, globalist movement, on one of the biggest, or if not the biggest, communist, globalist, socialist, subversive network, CNN. CNN and Jake Tapper are interviewing two of the biggest communistic, socialistic, globalistic, subversive national security threats to this country, James Clapper and John Brennan. Do you see this? And then they put it out on the airwaves, and people believe this nonsense. It's I mean, actually, when you sit back and look at it from an intelligence point of view, I'm sure if I had Scott Eulinger on here, former CIA station chief, I'm sure that he would be saying the same thing. This is pretty phenomenal, this spy versus spy stuff, the subversive tactics that they're using. It's pretty incredible, actually, when you think about it. Just during the Obama administration, I mean, look, you could say Obama, Bush, Clinton, Bush, for sure. Definitely Carter. Don't know about Reagan. But so many of those people, especially when we had the culmination during the Obama era, if you look at all the people that worked at the top levels in the federal government, there were so many subversive, communistic, establishment, red-green alliance type people involved. It was shocking. What's even just as shocking now is the fact that President Trump has not gotten rid of a vast majority of those people. I know it's difficult, but I would rather have seen different agencies running at less of a capacity and been able to concentrate on getting rid of that swamp than the way it's been done. I don't agree with the way it's been done. Speaking of the way it's been done, Jeff Sessions is one of those people, the Attorney General, who's done basically nothing. Now he's talking about possibly looking into Clinton, saying that maybe we should evaluate how much more evaluation do you need? I'm gonna talk about that in a minute. But with these individuals, it's just unbelievable when you sit there and you watch this whole, now that you're aware of it. And I hope that people are aware of this as I've talked about this over the past couple of years. I hope that you're starting to see this, that you're aware. And when you watch this, it should start to make sense. Globalistic, socialistic, communistic CNN and one of their main mouthpieces, Jake Tapper. So glad he's off screen. He's such a whiny little wimpy looking dude. Then he interviews these two people who are players on the same team, and then they project that out. I'm surprised they didn't have Congressman Schiff sitting right in here. Like, he looks so weird, that guy. I'm surprised that they didn't have him right in here. They would have this trio of communistic liars and national security threats all in this one little area. Perhaps this is some of the biggest national security threats that we have in this country. But now that you're aware of it, you should start to identify these people and start to identify the games that they play. You can see it's being played right here in front of you. It's right here. I love looking at these trolls on here. Let's see here. Hold on here. I don't know if this guy's saying I'm jacking his comments or if that's somebody else that's jacking your comments. I ain't jacking your comments for sure. I don't know what that's all about. But anyway, these freaking guys and what you're seeing in this one video right here should make you pause. And if you want to go look it up on YouTube, you can go look up John Brennan. How'd I look this up? Just like ex-intelligence chiefs fire back at Trump criticism. And watch this and think about it while you're watching it. You're looking at a machine, a propaganda machine, spin stuff up and spit it out. It's not even liberal and conservative, folks. This goes far past. If you're liberal and you're watching this, I don't have a beef with you, really. This goes far beyond you. This is leftist communistic subversion that's been going on since the early 1900s, and because of technology and because the ethics have just gone away from a lot of these politicians and these political hacks like these two liars, and of course in the media. Don't confuse the media with the First Amendment and freedom of press. They're not the press. They're not disseminating information that is truthful and lawful. They're disseminating lies that want to subvert this country. I don't think that they should be able to do that legally. That's just the way I feel about it. So let's listen to a few more minutes of this, and then we'll move on.
The effect of these attacks, not on you two or Jim Comey, but on other people in the FBI, in the CIA, in the NSA, people who are still there, who worked under you and are still there working to try to make the country safer?
First, I have to reciprocate what an honor it has been to serve with the likes of John Brennan and Jim Comey, who are dedicated public servants and have served this country long and well and with great integrity. I think it cannot have a positive impact on the morale of the workforce of the Intelligence Committee. But I do believe in my heart that the men and women of the intelligence community will continue to convey truth to power, even if the power ignores the truth.
At one point, President Trump said he thinks Vladimir Putin is insulted by the suggestion and the conclusion by the intelligence agencies that Russia interfered in the U.S. election. What do you make of that, his bringing up that Putin feels insulted?
Well, I think Mr. Putin is very clever in terms of playing to...
I have a feeling this guy's got a real psychological problem. I got his face right there. He's got a psychological problem with projection. I can guarantee it. He's going to project onto Putin who he actually is. So let's listen to what he has to say. I haven't listened to this part of the interview, so let's listen to this.
Trump's interest in being flattered. And also, I think Mr. Trump is, for whatever reason, either intimidated by Mr. Putin, afraid of what he could do or what might come out as a result of these investigations. So it's very worrisome, and I think it sends a worrisome, very disturbing signal to our allies and partners who are concerned about Russian interference in their democratic processes as well. So it's either naivete, ignorance, or fear in terms of what Mr. Trump is doing vis-a-vis the Russians. President
Trump took to Twitter yesterday to try to justify his position, his posture towards Russia. He said, quote, "When will all the haters and fools out there realize that having a good relationship with Russia is a good thing, not a bad thing? They're always playing politics." There was misspelled. "They're always playing politics, bad for our country. I want to solve North Korea, Syria, Ukraine, terrorism, and Russia. You can greatly help."
He completely lost me there because he's going to read this and like every other emotional leftist out there who have no argument, they go back and they say he spelled "there" wrong. This freaking guy.
The haters and fools out there realize that having a good relationship with Russia is a good thing, not a bad thing. They're always playing politics. There was misspelled. They're always playing politics, bad for our country. I want to solve North Korea, Syria, Ukraine, terrorism, and Russia. You can greatly help. So that's his argument. Russia can be a help on these issues, and that the posture of being belligerent towards Russia won't assist in that matter.
Well, I suppose they could be, but I think it's naive to assume they will be. Again, the likelihood that the Russians are going to pursue like interests with us is slim and none. And I think it's very naive and again, in fact, perilous to this country to make an assumption that Russia is going to behave with the best interests of the world or certainly the United States in mind. They're not.
So this guy right here, I can guarantee you, if President Trump had gone and talked and had the same tweet saying that we don't trust Russia, we're going to cut ties with them, I want to keep them at arm's length, there's no way that we could trust them, I can guarantee you 100% that this weirdo would have come out and said that he's dangerous, that his rhetoric is divisive, that the game that he's playing with Russia is wrong because he should be trying to encourage diplomacy. I can guarantee you 100% that's what would have come out of this political hack's mouth. Guarantee it.
So, Mr. Brennan, Director Brennan, you said a couple minutes ago, you talked about the reasons why President Trump might be susceptible to what Putin tells him. And you talked about flattery. You also talked about fear. I can't ignore the fact that all of this comes at a time when there's a lot of speculation about whether or not the Russians have damaging information about President Trump. This comes.
Now, remember, who was it here? Gigi, I can't tell, it's so small. What you said is, if Russia's so bad, why did Hillary and Obama give them nuke fuel? Good question. The other thing is, if the nuke fuel is real, and it is real, and that's bad, why aren't they talking about it? They're still not talking about it. They're talking about the president and Russia and the election and that nonsense. That's what they're still talking about. After all this time, even though when you look at the majority of the states in this country and how they voted and how it's broken down perfectly between large cities and rural areas, and you'd go and talk to everybody in those areas, and that's how they voted, they're still saying that the Russians had played this huge, dangerous role and that Trump was integrated, all this nonsense, but yet they won't say anything about Uranium One when they should be talking about the reality of how dangerous that is. And if they didn't, as this individual said here on Twitter, if we didn't have, if it was all bad, why were they doing those deals with them? Why would we do deals with them like that?
Of course, within the context of the fact that President Trump has been willing to criticize everyone from the cast of Hamilton to Meryl Streep, but has yet to say one disparaging word about Vladimir Putin. Do you think this idea that maybe the Russians have something on him, have compromising material, is relevant here?
Well, I don't know if Mr. Trump is considering that. I just know that he has been very determined to try to delegitimize any effort to come up with the truth in terms of this investigation. His attacks on the intelligence community, on the assessment, the attacks on the media. This is an effort to...
This guy, he just literally pointed out all the people that have gone against Trump and the people that have used this fake Russian story to cause his political career to try to get to end quickly and to go against him. He just literally named every single person that's in, or every group that's involved with that. Unfreaking believable. Listen to this guy. Such a weirdo. But the thing is, he thinks he's doing a great job because he lives in and around Washington, D.C. He's an elitist. I got to look him up here in a second and see where he went to college. I talked to a guy today who I'm going to have on this show who's running for Senate in Massachusetts, and I'm going to have him on the show because you should vote for this guy. He's an MIT grad, and he invented email. And I got to interview him today, and he's going against Elizabeth Warren in Massachusetts. He was talking about Harvard and the reality. That's why I'd like to have him on here. You know, I'm always ragging on Harvard, but he was talking about how Harvard and these Ivy League schools are like hedge funds for Washington, D.C. They send their people there. They go to school there, and then they take those people out, finance them into the swamp. They are the swamp, and then the money goes back to these Ivy League schools and churns these people out. He reminds me of that. Clapper reminds me of that whole type of mindset, this arrogant yet incompetent yet typically highly educated. And when I say educated in school, not in knowledge, understanding, experience, and ultimately nefarious.
Again, try to undermine those quarters that could pose a serious threat to him. Also, I think it shows the insecurity that he still feels about the election and how Russian interference may have...
What insecurity would Trump feel about the election? He won it. This guy's killing me. He's killing me.
In fact, to that election. So I think there's a combination of factors that are motivating the president at this time.
Do you know of any compromising material that the Russians might have on him?
No.
I have shared everything I know with the intelligence committees.
Which amounted to nothing.
That's not a no or a yes, because we're not privy to the information that you gave.
So hold on. I got to take us. I almost threw up a little bit there looking at Jake Tapper, trying to make this sound like a serious question.
The intelligence committees.
That's true.
Okay. Let me ask you a question about how in 2016 you were all watching and monitoring and assessing what was going on with the Russian interference. In retrospect, was it a mistake of President Obama not to make a bigger public deal of this at the time?
Well, this is in the coulda, woulda, shoulda department. And bearing in mind, there really wasn't much of a template book for how to handle a situation like this. I think the arguments, the concern that the administration had was, if we did make a big public deal of this, would we first be amplifying what the Russians were doing? And I think, frankly, the president was probably sensitive to the accusation that he was putting his hand on the scale and trying to affect the outcome of the election if he spoke up about it. Now, we did. We put out a statement. At the time, then Secretary of Homeland Security Jay Johnson and I put out a statement on the 7th of October, which was a pretty forthright statement about what the Russians were doing, and it was issued before the election. Unfortunately, it got emasculated and overcome by the excess Hollywood tapes, and so it sort of got lost in all that. So I think what was done was appropriate. I guess you could go back and say, well, we should have been more aggressive or done something earlier. I don't know, but there were good reasons why there was caution and discretion here.
Director Brennan, so General Clapper just said there wasn't a template, but Russians have been attempting to interfere in elections before. 2016 was not the first time. It was the most successful time ever, probably, in Russian history. But it wasn't the first time.
I'm getting bored.
Why were the intelligence agencies, and not just the intelligence agencies, law enforcement, communications, every part of the government, why was it not better prepared?
Well, I think we were prepared.
I'll tell you why, and then I'm going to end this part of the show. They're not prepared because they're ran by idiots like these two people right there. All right, John Brennan and Jim Clapper, and they're in association and collusion with individuals like Jake Tapper and CNN. Right, fake news, fake people, incompetence all the way around. And ultimately subversive, communistic, globalistic-minded people. Sick. So, let me get rid of these guys. And move to the next. I think I can't say any more about them. It's that simple, folks, to see this. It's that simple. Yeah, real quick, let's go to the B block, and I want to talk real quick about the Army, and again, and then we're going to go into the GQ and the Glamour magazines, how I believe that they're communistic. So let's go to the B block. How many of you are prepared for an incident like this? Get my new book, Sheep No More, The Art of Awareness and Attack Survival, and I will teach you to think like an attacker so you can truly defend yourself. Don't just react, act. Available for pre-order now on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. Sheep No More. Get it. So, basically, and I have to pull this back up because I had it up here a second ago. The Army, hold on here. The Army has decided in its infinite wisdom, for some unknown crazy reason, this is what bean counters will do. The people who are so addicted to statistics, they are wanting, or not wanting, and I really hope the president does something about this. The Army is going to lift the ban on people who cut themselves, mentally ill, and drug abusers to meet recruiting goals. Can you believe that? You all should be screaming at the top of your lungs to your congressman about this nonsense. It says, it's on FoxNews.com, facing low recruitment levels, the U.S. Army quietly lifted its ban on allowing people with a history of mental illness, self-mutilation, and drug abuse to serve in the military, despite warnings from the industry about risks involved. So they're going to take these, see, this is what I'm talking about, folks. They're going to take people that have mental issues, and they're going to put them into the Army. And I think for a couple reasons. One is because they don't give two craps about the people that are out there serving for the right reasons, and they're going to be put on the front line. They don't care about them. Or it doesn't even matter if it's the front line. You're going to put somebody in an office with somebody who has a bipolar disorder and expect that not to be disruptive? Are you kidding me? So this is one of the most ridiculous things I've ever heard, and it shows that they really don't care about those people who serve. That's the first thing. Second thing, I think that they're trying to weaken the military, and this is one of the easiest and quickest ways to weaken to get the mentally ill into the military by large numbers, so they can weaken it. That's the other thing. Third, if they do this, it's going to be easier for them to say, look, we have bipolar people and they're doing just fine, or we have schizophrenic people, or we have cutters and they're doing just fine, then we should have transgender people. We should have people that want to wear diapers to work in the military. You know what I'm saying? It's like, it's never going to stop. This is, again, in large part due to people like Clapper and Brennan, people like all the former under the Bush administration, and although I did like what's his name that was Secretary of Defense, Donald Rumsfeld. I did like him, but all these other people, political hacks, they pick people based on whether or not they can further social experimentation and weakening of the military. there's nothing good going to come out of this. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. So I don't understand. Okay, so they're 80,000 people short. They need to work harder to recruit. They need to stop wasting money on things like flyovers and military personnel at events like the NFL, and they need to work on getting their recruitment numbers up. If anything, I think everybody should serve 2 years in the military. I say it. I feel that way. I think it's one of the things we're lacking in this country. But this is nonsense. This is ridiculous. This is weird. It makes no sense whatsoever. You're talking about the mechanism that defends your freedom from enemies. You're talking about the mechanism that ensures your national security and the power of this country so it can stay free. And they're wanting to secrete mental illness into it. That makes zero sense. No sense. And for those of you, a bunch of people just joined us. I'm just reading this headline here. The Army lifts a ban on cutters. That's people who cut themselves because they're stressed, mentally ill, and drug abusers to meet recruiting goals. This reminds me when I was in the FBI, and the NYPD and law enforcement been making this mistake for a long time. So I was in the FBI, and I saw one of the detectives that I work with slam his phone down and get up to walk out. And I said, dude, what's going on? He said, that was recruitment from the NYPD. They wanted to know if I had arrested a prostitute back several years ago. And when I said, yeah, why? They said, oh, because she applied to be an officer, and we were just checking up to see if this was actually her that got charged with prostitution. He goes, yeah, that's her. And they said, okay. He said, what is she going to be? Not going to be allowed to go in. They said, no. She's already, her file's all the way already through. She'll be in the academy. He was livid. And it's the same thing here. When you go out and you recruit these types of people, this is what you're going to get. This is what you're going to get. You're going to get prostitutes, drug addicts. You're going to get schizophrenic and bipolar individuals. You're going to get more murders. You're going to get more people that are quitting in training. You're going to get more people that cause other people to quit, or you're going to stress people out. They're going to break down mission efficiency, effectiveness. You're going to take somebody like that who can then, remember, their thinking may be, let's just keep these people at low-level jobs. But this is the Army. This is the government, right? The government, where people that I know went in the FBI, they're Korean, they speak Korean, and they got put on Chinese foreign counterintelligence, okay? That's what we're talking about, the intelligence level. So the same thing in the Army. They'll let them in under this program, but then they'll have a need for somebody, or they'll just filter their way through, and then all of a sudden they're in a top-secret cleared area, for instance. It's shocking. And I know all the veterans that are watching this show are probably shaking their heads thinking, WTF, what is this all about? What sense does this make? And yes, Sue Wagner says they aren't signing up because of what our corrupt government officials are doing. Absolutely right. I had another caller today when I was hosting the David Webb show, which I'll be hosting again Friday. And the caller said that he was never in the military, and when his son wanted to go in, and he said it was one of the regrets of his life, but his son wanted to go in under the Obama administration, he said, no, you shouldn't go. And his son didn't. He was happy with that. I disagree with that. I believe if your kids want to serve in the military in of itself actually can mold you into a better person. Even if there's no war, even if there's a nefarious president or whoever, the military and the training that you go through is going to do nothing but improve you, period. So that, I think, is good. And I think people should go in the military. I think they should be driven to serve. And the reason that they're not driven to serve is because we raise soft people, soft children. We raise children that want to sit in front of video games. We raise children that want to be, that feel like they should be heard, that their opinion matters before they're even anybody, before they've even ever done anything. They have no problem casting judgment upon people that have gone out and served and done real things, and never once tell you thank you for your service. Never once say, well, what do I need to do with my life? Help me, mentor me, guide me. They don't do that. We raise soft children in this country. And then we expect them to pick up arms and go to war, or just raise their right hand and then go suffer for the country. They're not going to do it. They're not going to do it. Why? Because you raised them that way. Your family, from the time your kids, I don't care if it's boys or girls, from the time they are able to talk, you should be talking about the military for them. It's the only place left where a boy can grow into a man and a woman can grow into a woman, under circumstances that are highly stressful and well thought out, so that your children get the right skill set, so they get the right amount of discipline, so they're able to push themselves to the extreme. There's no other place that you're going to get that. You should be pushing your children towards that. But this is nonsense. This is crazy. All right, one more block. Let's do this, and then I'm going to go to the truth zone and get out of here. Let's go to C block. All right, let me bring this up here real quick. Okay, for those of you that didn't hear about this news, and I want to wait for this to come up here. I need a new, just went dead again. I need a new Mac, or MacBook Pro. Let's see here. It's hard to even look at this picture. It's quite frankly, it's disturbing, but at the same time, again, all the stuff I've been talking about, folks, let's not be ridiculous and stupid. Let's just look at reality for what reality is. And this, my friends, this is reality. Okay, I hate to keep saying I told you so, but I told you so. And anybody that has thought that this isn't the case, there you go. All right. Colin Kaepernick has been named Citizen of the Year by GQ magazine. I am going to go out and get this magazine, and I'm going to use it for toilet paper. Not for me. I'm going to use it to pick up my dog's crap. I'm really going to do that. And I'm going to take a picture of it and I'm going to put it on Twitter. And I'm going to use that face to pick up my dog's poop. This is ridiculous, folks. This is one of the sickest things I have ever seen. I think that this, along with, where's the other one here? Let me pull this up. So you have Linda Sarsour gets, where's the cover here? She gets Woman of the Year. As you see, evidently they don't want to put the cover photo up. Let's see if that brings it up. That's so on Glamor, Women of the Year, they got Tamika Mallory, right here. She's the one that that I had the big fallout with on the radio. I believe that's Tamika Mallory. I may be wrong about that. But I think it is. And this is Linda Sarsour right here. Getting somebody who is pro-Sharia, somebody who is deals in the lines of the Red Green Alliance. She is a self-proclaimed jihadist, and I've talked to somebody who knows her before and said she's full of crap. That actually knows her, that's a Muslim, and then Tamika Mallory, who's the loudmouth girl that was on the radio with me, that is one of the perhaps the biggest racist I've ever seen in my life. I mean, this is very, very disturbing. This is hugely disturbing. But at the same time, I'm glad that these individuals are being recognized, and I'll tell you why. Because whether it's her or where'd he go here? Whether it's her or, come on, computer. This weirdo right here. Okay, first of all, could you look any more like a Black Panther? That's the exact look he's going for. And it's just everything that I've been saying is coming to fruition, folks. This is exactly the propaganda that in the 60s, had they had the technology and the internet and Twitter and Facebook and all these things, they would have been using it like crazy to do this same thing and prop up these same people. They're no different than the Weather Underground, no different than the communist subversive back in the 60s. In fact, many of the people behind the scenes are those exact people. They're these, and that's why they look exactly the same. They haven't changed. They have just passed it on to a new group of people. This is an insult to anybody who's ever served this country. It's an insult to real heroes out there, to real citizens. You know who should have been the Citizens of the Year, I think, this year? It should have been the, what do they call that? The Redneck Navy, or the ones that went out and rescued all those people in Houston. That was remarkable citizenry right there. It should have been Citizens of the Year, and it should have been those people that went and did that. I believe out of all the things that occurred this year, that was the most selfless and unbelievably touching thing that I saw in all of the news. Was what they did in the selfless devotion to people of all colors, all creeds, all sexes, going out there and trying to rescue people and help them out. That should have been it, not this guy. It should have been the Redneck Navy or whatever you called it, all those people that went out there and selflessly put themselves at risk to go save these people, not this fool. But do you see, you see, again, I bring all this stuff up again. I've done all these shows on, I got to get this guy's face off here. I've done all these shows talking about all this different stuff. And yet people are still surprised when this happens. I'm glad Glamour Magazine voted Linda Sarsour Woman of the Year, and I'm glad GQ Magazine put Colin Kaepernick up there as Citizen of the Year. Why? Because now you know you can take Glamour Magazine, scratch it if you didn't know that already, scratch it off the list of, or just put it on the list of communist subversive propaganda tools. GQ Magazine, put it on that list. And the same thing with CNN and all these other mainstream media groups. You can put them on the list so that you know who they really are. And definitely when it comes to these magazines, you don't have to ask the question anymore, okay? It's already there. Don't have to ask that question. Now, the only thing I want to say before I go is a good friend of mine sent me a article today about John Grisham. John Grisham, the millionaire writer, right? He's an author. He wrote, he does all these law movies. The one with Tom Cruise where, I'm trying to think of the name of that movie, where he was in Memphis and he started working for a law firm that was owned by the mafia, right? So Gosh, I forget the name of that movie. So John Grisham's written a lot of these different these movies. So evidently, according to him, and this comes off of Forbes magazine. I don't know if you guys can see that. Okay, millionaire author. There it is. John Grisham says, not all men who watch child porn are pedophiles. Okay. The Firm. Yes, The Firm. Now, you're probably not going to think it's so iconic now after I just showed you that. I'm sorry that... man, they make this so small. Somebody on Twitter said it was iconic. Okay, probably not so much now after looking at this headline that millionaire author John Grisham says, not all men who watch child porn are pedophiles. He also went on to say, this is bizarre here. He said that we have prisons now filled with guys my age, 60-year-old white men in prison who've never harmed anybody, would never touch a child. And then he says this, quote, but they got online one night and started surfing around, probably had too much to drink or whatever, and pushed the wrong buttons, went too far, and got into child porn. I don't know what state this guy lives in, but he needs to be in jail. And his computers need to be searched. This is just... You don't just go online and when you're drunk and start surfing the internet and oops, I didn't mean to go down that rabbit hole and then I saw this and I couldn't get it out of my brain. You can't understand how psychopathic the comment is that he just made. That would be like saying that snuff films where they kill people, there's really films like this and people get sexually aroused by this, that there's nothing wrong with it because the people that are watching it are never going to kill. Well, first of all, you don't know that. And secondly, somebody gets murdered in order to make that movie. Although there's fake ones, but there are real ones. So, or saying that, you know, people who fantasize about child sex trafficking, they're not pedophiles. They're not weird. There's nothing. They're not hurting anybody. That's, you know, something that is along the lines of what this weirdo John Grisham has just said. That, and I'm going to quote it again. He quote, "We have prisons now filled with guys my age, 60-year-old white men in prison who have never harmed anybody, would never touch a child." He then went on to say, but they got online one night. I just randomly got online one night, started surfing around, probably had too much to drink or whatever, and pushed the wrong buttons as though there's like there's, you know, you're, oh, I'm so drunk, and you push 3 and enter, and all of a sudden there's child porn on your computer. Oops. And then like they look at it and they're like, oh, I'm fixated on that. Not, and he says they pushed the wrong button, went too far, and got into child porn. First off, if, you know, if you've ever seen a beheading video of these psychopaths over in the Middle East beheading somebody, it's not something that when you see it, the normal human would be comfortable with. Because you're literally seeing a person murdered. Well, it's the same thing with this. You don't sit and watch and stumble upon, first of all, you don't stumble upon child porn. It's not just on the internet. There's certain ways that pedophiles work in order to put the child porn out there. You have to have passwords. You have to be a part of that society. You have to be trusted. And that's the way that they get in there and actually share these images that are real. Okay, they're not made up. These are real images. These are images of children being raped. And according to John Grisham, you know, people just stumble upon that. But you don't. I used to be an FBI agent. I know how that works. I never worked in the child porn area, but I talked to these guys because one time I thought I had, and I still think to this day the guy was into child porn or had raped children. Unfortunately, they were just too busy to take a look at him. That's the, you know, it's on them. But So I started looking into this, and I also had a detective friend from another state who actually worked this stuff for a while. He had to get out of it. Said it's horrible. This guy was horrified by the images that he saw. And according to John Grisham, you can push wrong buttons on your computer. Like you're like typing in, you're drunk. You're like, I got to buy a new dog collar for my dog. I'm going to type in dog collar, and you actually type in POG. And all of a sudden, you hit enter, and child porn's all over the internet. Well, that's not the way it works. And anybody who would accidentally stumble upon child porn, according to John Grisham, they just get into it. This is the weirdest thing I've ever heard, and law enforcement should be just knocking this guy's. They should have a Title III up on him. They should be, not nefariously, covertly going onto his computers, his Facebook. They should be looking at all the different, if he has any secret names. They should be looking at the past history of the stories that he wrote and see if there's anything. They need to investigate everything about this guy. This is almost confessing to watching child porn. It's as close as you could actually get to saying that he watches child porn. And this is shocking. And by the way, there's no way the media can twist this, okay? You either say that quote or you don't say that quote. And if you say it, I would say the chances are you're a pedophile and potentially somebody who's acted out on that. There's no other reason why he would ever say that. And yes, Elizabeth, I'm saying John Grisham is saying that. All right, I'm going to go to the Truth Zone. Remember, if you have not shared this show tonight, make sure you share it. I should have been saying that earlier when the numbers were higher. Share it. Make sure that you retweet it. Do what you ever have to do to get this word out about this show so that people can get here and see this truth. And if it's on Twitter, if you're on Twitter, you can retweet it, and then in about an hour, unretweet it, and then retweet it. You can do that all night long, so that it just continues to populate the news feed for people. That's where you're going to get this word out. On Facebook, you can share it. Share it with all your friends individually. If you have, do whatever you got to do, get the word out. Lastly, two things. The book sales are skyrocketing, which means that you want to make sure you have your order in for the book or books if you want to buy multiple ones, which I would recommend. If you spend $100 on these books, and then you give them out to all their friends and family, even if they just read chapters 3, 4, and 5, it's going to change their lives the way they look at things. Hopefully they'll read the whole book. So I can't thank you all enough. Keep getting the word out for that, and go out and get yourself some of these books. Even if you buy extra ones and you know where a women's shelter is, hand them out. If you're rich, buy 1,000 of them and take them to women's shelters, or send them here, and I will make sure, I'll even photograph so you can see where they're going, and we'll get them to women's shelters. That would be an amazing thing if you want to do that. Just connect with me offline, either on direct message through Twitter or Facebook. And lastly, as you'll see scrolling across here on the bottom in just a second, there it is, the GoFundMe page, gofund.me/The Experts Roadshow. I can't thank you all enough for what you've done in helping me with last week was fantastic. We were able to kick the funds back up, but we didn't get them far enough up where I'm preparing myself for December and January for a run on getting out there and meeting you guys again and bringing the book and teaching people how to use the book and how to defend yourself, and also giving you guys another opportunity to voice your opinions on the show. So make sure, $20 to $50, donate. If you can donate more, donate more. CJ Liebolt donated $1,000 last week. It's blown away when that happens. And the more you give, the bigger and better this show is going to get. Eventually, I have to wait until December when this book comes out before I can move and start going out on the road. But it's gonna help out tremendously in everything with this show, with the traveling. And remember, you're a part of this show. You're a part of it. And if this show ever gets picked up on a real network, you all are going with me. And the truth will just blow up at that point, all right? It'll get bigger and bigger. So that's the goal. All right, let's go to the Truth Zone. I'm going to close this up, and I hope you guys have a great night. Let's go to the Truth Zone. How many of you are prepared for an incident like this? Get my new book, Sheep No More, The Art of Awareness and Attack Survival, and I will teach you to think like an attacker so you can truly defend yourself. Don't just react, act. Available for pre-order now on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. Sheep No More. Get it. All right, so right now the computer's starting to freeze up. It's been doing this a lot. I don't know what's causing that to happen as we get into the ends of the show. So we're going to end it. So, again, gofund.me/The Experts Roadshow. Continue to help fund this show. And that way we'll be fully prepared when we hit the road and we get out there. Remember, besides, I'm not getting paid for the book until January. So whatever sales are happening on the book, we're not getting any of that money until January. So make sure that you don't give up on the GoFundMe page. Make sure you don't stop spreading the word about this show and about the book. Help us continue to keep. Everybody should know and own a copy of this book in this country. I'm going to push this like nothing except for the Bible has ever been pushed, so that people can see how bad people look at them, so they can turn around, divide their lives up into sectors, and then target each sector of their life so that they can be safer. That's the goal for this book. I'm not just looking to say, if you see something, say something. My goal is for you to look around and see where an attacker can come from, avoid it. If you have to be there, then mitigate it. That's what my goal is. Because ultimately, if you walk around the city of New York or any other major place in this country, but you're not aware what's going to happen, you are going to fall victim eventually. And when you say something, it's going to be too late when you see it. Just like what you're seeing now. I've been seeing this for years. Certain people that watch this show have been seeing this for years. The communist spread, the globalist movement, the socialistic groups or the communistic groups like Antifa, like By All Means Necessary, Black Lives Matter, the Black Panthers, the different gay activist groups. It's important for us all to differentiate ourselves from those groups and realize that we don't need them to be fully supportive of each other. We should be supportive. We should be like one big happy family. And then if somebody causes problem, we should smack them upside the head and put them in jail. And they should have rights in jail. Right now, the people in jail have pretty much all their rights. We don't set standards in this country. We don't punish the people who don't meet the standards. And we don't hold the people that are in high places in this country accountable. We hem and haw about it, but we don't stand together against them. Again, I say this all the time. We have to stand together. So that's it for tonight. I hope that this was a little bit of a longer show. I hope you got a lot out of it. And I think what we saw today was incredible, the news that came out. Incredible example of the reality of these communistic, socialistic globalists. Stand with me, folks. Stand with me, and let's make this country great again. Let's not rely on President Trump. He's not going to do it all. It's going to be us. We're going to be the ones that do it. As always, I'll be hosting David Webb's show on Friday. I think I'm going to be hosting Sean Hannity's radio show the day before Thanksgiving. So if you're traveling, you'll be able to listen. Tell everybody about it. This Friday on SiriusXM Patriot Channel 125. And then the following week, the day before Thanksgiving, I'll be hosting the Sean Hannity radio show. Old Rico, my good buddy, he's asleep right there, right next to me. I love that dog. I love you all. I love this country. I love God the Father and His Son that died for me. Stand with me, and let's make this country great again. I'm Jonathan Gillum. This is The Experts. The truth has arrived. How many of you are prepared for an incident like this? Get my new book, Sheep No More, The Art of Awareness and Attack Survival, and I will teach you to think like an attacker so you can truly defend yourself. Don't just react, act. Available for pre-order now on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. Sheep No More. Get it.